Well, good morning, everyone. My name's Ian Mash. I'm the Vice President in the Chief Transformation Office at Huawei, and I'm speaking to you this morning from a rather damp and grotty UK. So I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the future of telecoms this morning. And I thought first I'd just do a quick introduction of Huawei. Our vision really is to bring a digital environment to every person, home and organization and have a fully connected and intelligent world. We've got a large number of employees, as you can see, 188,000, 80,000 of those work in R&D, and a lot of those R&D guys work in that tower you can see on the left of the screen. We're present in 171 countries and we have very high brand recognition around the world. So we have a very comprehensive product range, and one of the things that's unique about Huawei is the focus that we have on our customers and our customers' businesses. Part of my role is to make customers more successful, whether they use our equipment or not. Hopefully we will use our equipment. But we have set out our stall really in these four pillars: consumer, carrier, enterprise, and cloud. And that ranges from smart devices like smartphones and wearables through connectivity, wireless and fixed networks, into computing and cloud. And the key point about that is that we're moving from information distribution and presentation to information processing and storage. And we're trying to apply intelligence across that piece. So we have full end-to-end connectivity and intelligence across our business and thus your businesses. So onto the main topic, really. The world is changing, but it's very clear to me and to Huawei that Africa has its own spin. By 2025, we're expecting about 3 billion 5G users around the world, and a proportion of those will of course be in the large conurbations in Africa, and that's a business-to-business market of about 600 billion we predict by 2025, and of that there's going to be at least 70 million fixed wireless access circuits. So 5G is getting off to a big start. We can see that already. We've got something like 90 live networks around the world. And looking at it from a perspective of Africa, Africa has very much its own spin. Africa has a large number of SMEs. Some of those, the very small ones, are supported by things like microloans. The smartphone is now becoming a way of life in Africa, much as it is in the rest of the world. And of course, when the smartphone arrives, everyone wants more data for the same price. So price, end user price, and cost of the network thus are under pressure. But another thing that's happening is we see end-to-end solutions becoming the norm. And there's some examples here, one in health. Babylon, which is a video GP service from here in Britain, but also running in Rwanda, is an opportunity to not work face-to-face, work face-to-face with your doctor. You don't have to go and see them. You can have a video call. And that's becoming quite clearly a very important product in the current COVID-19 crisis. But we're also seeing the growth of small clinics like this one, and also connectivity to mobile services like the ambulance. In education, we're seeing the need for having connectivity to schools, even the smaller schools. And as an example here of something we did in Colombia, where both the school and the clinic could use the rural coverage capability. So the school had the opportunity to have screens. It had the opportunity to get people to dial in from remote parts of Colombia, experts in specific areas to help educate the children. And there's an example on the right there of a small school with the children working at PCs. So the final area really that's very much different in Africa from my perspective is mobile money. And MTN, as you're probably all aware, has a very, very powerful product set that's offering mobile money, and that's becoming a very important product set around Africa. So what does that actually mean for a TowerCo? Well, going forwards, I think towers are not just going to be on site with just a power capability and a tower to support whatever service, 3, 4, 5G. The tower is going to have to support other services going forward. So things like servers and storage, like edge computing storage. So you need an inverter there. For a camera environment, for both on-site security and things like smart city and smart transportation, as that moves around from both cities and out into the suburbs. High voltage DC for 5G. 5G has a higher power requirement, as you're probably aware. Things like DC distribution boards for new businesses and multi-user sharing of electricity metering, solar capability, and then obviously the rectification of that solar capability and diesel generation to support things like RRUs and AAUs on site. So there's a high number of devices requiring power going forward. But what it also means that as the things that we talked about roll out, the health, the education, the smartphone, there's a need for much deeper coverage and more dense coverage. So that's products in building, urban, suburban, and rural. And there's an example there of the rural capabilities that can happen as a result of some of the Huawei products, which gives you a 60-kilometer range from the nearest main macro. So clearly things are changing. What that means for us in terms of strategy positioning for the tower industry is that we are focused on helping to connect the unconnected, helping to make the network greener, and digitizing the operations and maintenance. And we believe that strategic partnerships with operators and TowerCos and maybe energy cos will help reduce the digital divide. So in summary then, briefly, data will, we believe, continue to grow. Denser coverage is going to happen in cities, and also rural demands are going to start to grow. And end-to-end solutions, as they roll out, will require more coverage and potentially more rural coverage. With the greening of the network, 5G is actually much more power efficient than other generations, but overall the power demands will be higher because of the larger number of capabilities that 5G brings to the party. And power will also be used, as I've said, in many new applications. And because of the price erosion, cost reduction will require detailed end-to-end management and proactivity. Therefore, digitization of the operations and maintenance capability is key. So Huawei believes that TowerCos are key to the future of telecoms growth, and particularly so in Africa. We put our customers first and listen to their requirements, and that makes Huawei unique amongst the big operators. Our integrated range of products and services really is designed to support you and your unique business model of sharing and capability, sharing of the capabilities going forward. So please feel free to contact us and we can discuss your needs and look to become strategic partners to support their African growth. And now I'm going to hand over to Shiroda Repetti. Shiroda is a partner at Delta Partners, the large consultancy. She's a specialist in digital media and smart city and has worked for Deloitte's MTN and SABC. She's also the first female vice president on the Engineering Council of South Africa. So over to you, Shiroda.
Thank you, Ian. And if we could move on to the first slide. Firstly, greetings to all the delegates and wishing that we can meet in person at next year's Tower Exchange event. It is challenging to speak on the topic of government policy to a Tower Exchange event audience. Apologies for that. And so I hope to share some key data points and messages that you would find value in, and in turn be able to share with your respective government stakeholders. Moving on to on this slide, if I could pause for a while. In this slide, I'm sharing with you our Delta partners' take on the top 10 megatrends that shape the future of the global connectivity landscape. I would like to focus your attention on the lower part of the slide, blocks 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, and in the center, which is 10, where we see cloud becoming the new network, and we forecast the convergence of the different connectivity technologies. We also see a future with government allocating increased investment into digital infrastructure. And lastly, perhaps what may be of great interest to you is that companies will seek to specialize more and look to carve out assets in an attempt to improve their return on invested capital. Moving on to the next slide and expanding onto the convergence of connectivity, here we show the move towards a unified connectivity fabric, deploying macro cells, small cells, Wi-Fi, femtocells, and even including private networks, satellites, microwave links, and D2D, with one of the implications for telco operators being that ubiquitous fiber will be required for front haul, mid haul, and back haul. Moving on to the next slide and zooming into an even greater level of detail on this slide, I'm trying to show how CDNs and edge computing will likely increase demand on metro and access networks. On the left of the slide, moving to the right across each block, let's graduate down towards 2025 and move across. We see the need for next generation passive optical networks and a shift in configuration in data centers, as large volumes of data will be more effective when cached at the edge closer to the location of computation and storage. The pandemic, as we know, created an unexpected situation for the future of work, and taking learnings from this, many companies are actively considering post-remote working locations, and this we know will require high-speed broadband connectivity. A key takeaway from this slide, particularly for government decision makers, is that yes, there are some parallels to be drawn from how mobile voice filled the gap when we had low fixed line coverage in African countries. However, the same design and investment approach used for mobile cannot and should not be used to develop optimally functioning data networks that need to underpin a digital economy. Moving on to the next slide. As much as we have phenomenally powerful technologies, we cannot harness the true benefits unless government is on board. Government will continue to have a major role to play in the shaping and implementation of policy to enable high-speed broadband. This slide shows 4 areas of a government strategy using an integrated approach. 2, simplification of government policies. 3, an improvement between the handshake of government and private sector players. And 4, where governments play a key role in the optimization of technology investment and operations. I will expand on these in my conclusion. Moving on to the next slide, let us briefly observe how the pandemic created a surge in network traffic, looking at the US, Europe, and in Australia, as people sought to connect with family and friends, work from home, and also use online learning platforms. We can see that this increased traffic was observed for fixed and mobile voice, as well as for data over fixed and mobile. And then moving on to the next slide, this shows how countries in Africa closely mirrored this, leading to an increased growth in traffic. I'd like to change gear, and on the next slide, get onto what should become business as usual and our new norm. We are in week, if I could have the next slide on, please, Ian. We are in week 42 of 2021. And whilst the pandemic has given us a most unfortunate use case for our industry, let us not forget that there are distinct requirements in Africa. We have 25 of the 30 fastest growing cities in Africa. Multiple digital cities, including megacities, are being spawned across Africa. And whilst in Europe, plans are underway for a gigabit society, let us try to better understand the regional requirements in Africa. In Nigeria, as shown in this slide, some 54% of the population are 20 years and younger, and 8% have higher education. In Angola and in the DRC, mining is a major contributor to the economy, and the age of the population is 20 years and younger is 57% and 56% respectively, with low levels of tertiary education. Let us remind ourselves that the connectivity solutions we build in this environment have to not only address urban and rural requirements, but play a key role to pivot African countries into functioning digital economies. And then moving on to the next slide, we take a quick look at infrastructure, including electricity. In this case, even though South Africa shows a 91% electrification of households based on UN figures, we know that on the ground we are presented with different challenges, namely access to reliable supply and cost of supply. So the key takeaway on this slide is to observe that for both government decision makers and private sector infrastructure companies, solutions on the continent need to factor in the electrification, civils infrastructure, and telecommunications requirements as a deliberate, cohesive solution intervention. African cities are in need of structural transformation that works across the economic strata of businesses, consumers, and citizens. And now to move on to my concluding slide. A few key messages for government stakeholders. At a national level, we need to see alignment at an interministerial level becoming a key objective. At a provincial level, we have seen encouraging evidence that work can take place better at remote locations, and provinces should remember to factor in secondary towns when investing in the expansion of the provincial backbone. At a metro level, local and regional governments, as we have seen, are the first respondents to emergency crises, and they play a key role in providing essential services, including broadband connectivity. So metros will need to revise their long-term plans for smart city functioning, and together with national government effort, metros must step up to bring the public sector into the digital age. On policy objectives, the main aim here is to achieve high-speed broadband should be when role players experience a simplification of policies with pragmatic implementation and a focus on the implementation success. For government and private sector, there always seems to be a who does first debate. But what needs to be underscored is the dependence, the mutual dependence on each other for a sustained economic growth. In some of the European countries, we're hearing about a need to speed up infrastructure investment to kickstart the economies. With the same and similar applying here, it is essential on this continent that those budgets extend beyond building hospitals, roads, and schools to also support high-speed broadband connectivity. And lastly, on technology pertaining to Africa, there's no need to sunset 4G LTE. This can still yield highly effective high-speed broadband where deployed. Governments need to apply more implementation focus on the award of spectrum, as well as on the operational effectiveness of open access networks. And lastly, moving to the metros, there is no new effort required other than a strong focus on implementation to improve way leave application processes, work closely with town planning, and to take a relook at the affordability and consistency in approach to the pricing of way leaves. And with that, I conclude my presentation for today. Thank you.
I guess we can hand back to Matthew now.
Thank you very much, guys. Yes, really interesting presentation, and thank you so much for giving us an update on how those global trends are affecting things in Africa. That gives us about 30 seconds until we are going to finish this session. So just thank you everyone for watching, and we will be starting in about 5 minutes with the interactive roundtables. So I'll see you all there.
Thank you, and bye.